In this next video, we will assume that our client has called to report that she has stopped working at Lowe's and has started a new job at Walmart on February 14th. When talking with the client, it is important to get some specific information regarding the last day at her previous employer. She states that her last day was on February 4th. Because we have no documented reason to doubt her statement of the last day, we will not require a verification of this. Once we have established this information, we need to send the client a DCC-90F and a DCC-90D. When filling out the DCC-90F, we're going to indicate the information that we're requesting and its due dates. Here you can see that we're requesting proof of wages for new employment at Walmart and that we've enclosed a form for her employer to fill out. Additionally, we are giving the client 10 days from the day we are sending the letter to provide the information to us. If this date was to fall on a weekend or a holiday, the information would be due on the next business day. Finally, we are reinforcing the due date by advising the client if the information is not received on this day, we will have to take actions to deny or discontinue the case. Once we have completed this form, we will want to print a copy to send to the client, and we'll also want to get a copy for our own case files in the office. Next, we will want to create the DCC-90D to send with the 90F for the new employer to fill out. You will need to use the form that is located in the DCC Forms library. You will want to fill out this information at the top, stopping when you get to the point of employer. The new employer will complete the remaining sections at the top, as well as complete the contact information located at the bottom. Once you've completed this form, you will print a copy for the client and also retain a copy for your own case records. Now that we have completed the information to send to the client, we will need to go back into Kix and make our notes. First, we've made a counselor note indicating the due date and what is due for easy reference if the client should call. Additionally, we've made a history note indicating that the client has called, what she is reporting, and the dates that are pertinent to that change. So the client has called and reported that she has stopped working at Lowe's as of February 4th and that she started working at Walmart on February 14th. Also indicated what we've sent the client and where we've placed the file, which is in the pending drawer number 26, since that's the date that everything is due back to the office. At this point, we will save our note and enter a manage case change date. Add our case change date, and we're going to make this for the date that the information is due back to our office. We're looking for Other, because employment was not listed in that list, and click Save. This will now add the due date to your case change workbasket, where you will be able to track it on the day that it comes due. Let's assume now that several days have passed and we've received the DCC-90D from our employer. Before starting the case change in Kix, we want to make sure that the information and the form have been filled out correctly. If they have not been filled out correctly, we will need to start the termination process for this case instead of starting the case change process. To begin with, we'll look at the top section and make sure that all the information that we need to complete the case change has been filled out. We can see the employer name, the start date, the date that they were paid, and this indicates that they've probably not been paid yet. We can also see what their hourly rate is and how many hours are anticipated to be worked each week. We can also see that the client is receiving taxable wages and that she's paid every 2 weeks. We also want to make sure that the contact information has been completed. The first 2 lines are for an outside payroll company. The last 3 lines are for the employer to fill out and sign. We want to make sure that there is a phone number there that we can contact the employer if need be, and that we have the address of the location where the client is working. This form seems to be acceptable, and so now we'll be able to move on with our case change process. Back in the case, we'll go to Eligibility Main, where we will need to enter an interview date. To determine the interview date, we need to decide if this change will have a positive or negative effect on the client's case. First, we'll go and take a look at the employment information that's already in the case. We go to Employment on the left-hand side and then click on the employer's name at that screen. We can see that the client is making $8 an hour, which is the same as what she's making at Walmart. However, it appears that there's an increase in hours per week. The increase in hours at the same rate would indicate that this is probably going to have a negative effect on the client's case. Therefore, the interview date that we will use will be equal to the date that the information was received. So we'll enter our interview date as a date that the information was received and choose Case Change. We will need to verify our date. Choose OK. As you can see, Kix has taken us to the Case Change Dates page where we can choose to remove the case change date that we have entered, thus removing it from the work basket. Once the date has been removed, we will want to move on to the screen that would apply to this case change. In this case, we're going to be using the employment screen. We can either click Next through all of the screens, or we can move directly to the employment screen by clicking on the left-hand column. To begin with, we need to end employment with this employer. We click on the employer's name, and then scroll down to where we see employment end date. You will recall the employment ended on February 4th. And choose Save. We now have an end date for this employment, and we need to add a new employer. We will be selecting the county for which our employer is located in, and also our employer's name, and hit Search. Walmart will bring up several options for us. However, if there were no options available, then we could choose New Employer and enter the information ourselves. We know from the DCC 90D that the client is working at the Gray Lag Walmart. We will be unable to change any of the detailed information about this except for the start date, which the client said and is confirmed by the DCC 90D as February 14th. For pay frequency, since we do not have pay stubs, we will be using the hourly rate to determine what the pay is per month. She's making $8 per hour, and according to the DCC 90D, she's working 30 hours per week. Select Save. As you can see, there has been a significant increase in her monthly earnings, which will most likely result in an increase in her daily copay. Now that we have completed this change in the employment screen, we can move on to the eligibility process. Again, you can choose Next through the screens, or you can move to the eligibility process by clicking on the button on the left-hand side of your screen. In eligibility process, we will select our eligibility type, which is CCIE for each of the children, and our reason would be work income eligible. Select Next. And we'll verify that the information has been changed. Select Finish. At the Documents Needed screen, we will be able to see the changes that we've made and their effective date. So you can see that the increase in income did take effect on the date that we entered as the interview date, and that there's also an increase in the assessed family copay of $1 per day. You may notice that this date is actually 12 days from the interview date, and that's because of the weekend. Our copay change reason would be an increase in income. And from here we will select No Documents Needed for each child. We have now successfully completed this case change. From here we will move to Enrollment Summary so that we can update the enrollment information. We will allocate the copay and then create the new certificate. So we'll click on the provider's name and choose Create. When we open the certificate, we want to verify that the new copay rate is there and that it is assessed on the correct day. As of 2/28, the copay will increase to $4 per day. We only need to send this front page to the provider and maintain one for the case file. Since no signatures are required, you will want to make sure that you go in and receive the certificate back into the system the same day you create it. Now that we have completed the case change, we want to issue a DCC 105 to the client advising of continued case eligibility. We can get the information needed for the DCC 105 by clicking on the effective date of 2/28. This will change all the information to what it will look like on the 28th of February. So we can see the maximum income considered income will be $1190.16 and the assessed copay will go to $4 a day. On the 105, we will fill out with the case information at the top. We will indicate that the copay will increase to $4 a day and its effective date. We also want to let the client know that the case has been reviewed and that the children remain eligible, and the reason why we have reviewed the case was because of a reported change in employment. We also want to indicate how many members we're counting in the household and what the total income is. Here we're using the total income that will be effective on the 28th of February. Once you've printed the 105 for the client and also made a copy for the case file, you will need to return to KICS to make your history note. Be sure that the history note is detailed enough, including what you received from the client, when you received it, and how you used it to complete the case change. You will also need to indicate any kind of information that was sent to the client or the provider. Once you've completed your history note, you will save it and go to Notes History, where you will print your case comments to put with the case change in the file. Remember, history notes include all the dates and actions that were taken from the time the case change was first reported until the completion of the case change. Once the notes have been printed, you will place all the paperwork associated with this case change in the case file and return the file to Actives.